Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here because honestly, we are looking at a truly remarkable piece of folklore today. It's this classic story known as Kisan ka Jadui Matka, which basically translates to the farmer's magical pitcher. Now, on the surface, this might just seem like a simple animated story. But as we break it down and really get into the source material, we are going to uncover some incredible emotional depth. We're talking profound moral lessons here about devotion, resilience, and what it actually truly means to sacrifice for your community. So get comfortable, settle in, and let's just dive right into this beautifully structured tale.
Right off the bat, let's meet our main guy, Mandar. He's a farmer in the village of Champavan. And look, his connection to his land, it isn't just about agriculture or making a living. It is deeply, profoundly personal. When people urge him to leave his dying village, his response is this incredibly powerful quote. The source material tells us he is literally clinging to the memories tied to this soil, like the fragrance of the rotis made by his mother's hands and the day and night sweat and toil of his father. He physically cannot turn his back on it. This sets the absolute core of our story, a man whose love for his roots defies all logic.
So let's get into part one, the drought of Champavan.
Just picture the stark contrast between what Champavan was and what it has become. For a full year, an entire year, not a single drop of rain has fallen. The source describes a really grim reality here. Trees that once stood tall and green, they're bowed and dead. Fields that yielded lush crops are now just dry, cracked earth. The river has turned into nothing but sand, and honestly, the most terrifying part, the well water has turned completely black. I want you to just imagine the sheer despair of looking out your window every single day and seeing your absolute paradise turned into a wasteland. That is Mandar's daily reality.
10 miles. That is the grueling distance Mandar must travel on foot under a blistering sun every single day. Because the local water is gone and the wood is dead, he has to trek all the way to another village as well just to fetch a single pitcher of water and sell wood just to make a meager living. To put that in perspective, that's walking for hours and hours in the extreme heat. It highlights not just the emotional toll, but the immense, agonizing physical hardship he's willing to endure just to stay on his homeland.
But survival isn't just about water, right? It's about community. And here we see the heartbreaking progression of Mandar's isolation. First, his old friend Sudhir packs up and leaves, just flat out telling Mandar the village is doomed. Then the village elders, like Kaka, depart. They praise Mandar's loyalty, sure, but they warn him he'll die if he stays. But the final, most crushing blow, that comes from his own home. His wife, Karuna, along with his brother-in-law Manish, they pack their bags. Karuna tells him bluntly that she refuses to starve with him. She basically says, "Come get me only when you come to your senses and leave the village." So Mandar is left completely, utterly alone in a ghost town.
Which brings us to section 2, a test of faith.
I want to pause here for a second and just ask you to step into Mandar's shoes. Imagine you are walking that 10-mile trek under the scorching sun. Your own pitcher is barely full. You're dizzy, you're intensely thirsty, and you know this water is literally all you have to survive the rest of the day. Suddenly, a staggering stranger asks you for a drink. What do? I mean, it's super easy to say we'd share from the comfort of our homes, but in a moment of extreme physical and emotional exhaustion, that's a completely different story.
Yet the source reveals the true depth of Mandar's character here. An old, staggering man approaches him, begging for water. Mandar looks at the tiny, tiny amount of water left in his pitcher. He knows he needs it, but then, incredibly, he smiles. He actually smiles. He lifts the pitcher and feeds the old man with his own hands until the man is totally satisfied and walks away. Mandar tries to continue his journey with an empty pitcher, but his body, it finally gives out. The world goes dark, his legs just give way, and he completely collapses from pure exhaustion.
Let's move on to section 3, the magical pitcher.
So when Mandar opens his eyes, he doesn't see the old man anymore. Instead, he sees a magnificent divine figure. It's Barababa, the very deity Mandar has been praying to this whole time. Barababa tells him that true devotion is really tested in the darkest of times. And because Mandar never lost his faith or his love for his soil, he's not just a villager anymore. As this quote beautifully states, he is the protector of the village. And to reward this absolutely incredible faith, the deity gifts Mandar a magical clay pitcher, a kalash.
But look, magic in folklore rarely comes without conditions, right? And Bhairav Baba lays down some very strict rules. Mandar is to pour the water on his fields and it will never run dry. However, and this is a massive however, he must never give the pitcher to anyone else. If he does, the other person can use it, but Mundar, he will permanently lose the ability to ever use its magic again. I mean, talk about high stakes. This ties his personal survival directly to his ownership of this artifact.
So Mandar rushes home, weeping with joy, and pours the water. Instantly, the magic works. His barren land just transforms into lush green crops. But notice what Mandar does next, because this is crucial. He doesn't hoard the magic. He looks around at the dead trees and the cracked earth of his neighbors' abandoned farms, and he realizes he cannot just save himself. Day after day, he tirelessly uses the endless water to revive the surrounding forests and literally every single farm in the village, bringing the entire ecosystem back to vibrant, wondrous life.
Okay, Section 4. The village returns. Let's look at how the villager reacts over time, because it's pretty wild. First, a villager named Raghunath stumbles upon the blooming fields and is utterly shocked, realizing Mandar wasn't crazy after all. His love literally made flowers bloom in the sand. A few weeks later, Mandar's wife Karuna returns, weeping and apologizing for ever doubting his faith. But as harvest time arrives, human greed rears its ugly head. Another villager, Anand, returns and aggressively confronts Mandar, demanding the crops that Mandar grew, simply because they are sitting on Anand's abandoned land. Can you believe that?
You might expect a massive fight here, but Mandar's response is just astonishing. He calmly places a hand on his wife's shoulder and tells Anand he doesn't want his land, his crops, or his money. Mandar selflessly surrenders all the profits. According to the source, Mandar tells them his only desire was just to see the village restored, to hear the birds sing in the trees again, and to smell the fragrance of crops filling their homes. His pure intentions absolutely humble Anand, who ends up apologizing right there on the spot.
And that leads us to our final act, Section 5, the ultimate sacrifice.
Now we have to remember the strict rule Bhairav Baba placed upon the magical kalash. Mandar cannot give it away without losing it forever. And a new, terrifying problem has just emerged for the newly returned villagers, bringing up a huge, looming question. Will Mandar risk his own ruin to save the very people who left him to die?
Because here is the final hurdle. The villagers are back, and sure, they harvested the crops Mandar grew for them, but as they try to plant seeds for the next season, nothing grows. Their lands are still inherently barren. They realize that while Mandar's fields are flourishing because he waters them with a kalash, their fields are dying all over again. Without continuous access to that magic pitcher, the village will simply starve once more.
The villagers are completely confused and desperate at this point. Mandar looks at the kalash, remembering the deity's very clear warning. If he gives it to them, he loses it. Period. But then he delivers this powerful line. If the whole village can be saved instead of just my field, what could be better? It's just this ultimate moment of clarity. Mandar chooses the collective over the individual.
So Mandar reveals the secret of the magical pitcher to everyone. And without a second thought for his own future, he just hands over the kalash to the villagers so they can water their fields. He willingly breaks the rule, permanently forfeiting his right to the divine magic. But get this, the exact moment he steps forward to hand it over, a blinding divine light bursts forth from the pitcher.
Before we talk about the result of that light, I really want to connect Mandar's actions to a profound concept. What Mandar just did is a perfect textbook illustration of Nishkam karma. It's the practice of taking selfless action for the greater good, completely unattached to personal reward or the fear of losing what you have. Mandar didn't save the village to be a hero, or to get rich, or to say, "I told you so." He did it simply because it was the right thing to do, even at his own immense personal expense.
And the divine definitely recognizes this. From that blinding light, Bhairav Baba reappears. He tells Mandar that his selfless love and sacrifice are so incredibly pure that they would captivate the minds of the gods themselves. Because Mandar was willing to give up everything for his people, Bhairav Baba rewards him with the ultimate gift. He summons real, natural rain. Thunder rolls, the skies open up, and the villagers literally dance in the pouring rain. Champavan is permanently saved, not by some magical crutch, but by the true, selfless devotion of one single farmer.
It's just an incredibly moving conclusion to our explainer today. Mandar's true devotion saved Champavan. But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. In the droughts of our own lives, when resources are thin, when friends walk away, and when the future looks bleak, how often does our faith endure the dry seasons? Are we willing to sacrifice our own magical pitcher for the good of others? Thank you so much for joining me as we unpack this beautiful source material today. I really hope it gave you as much to think about as it gave me. Keep learning, keep reflecting, and I'll see you in the next explainer.